Hey, what's going on? TK here, Tuesday night, live, first episode of a new series. So, rocking my ancient fire hat, rocking my old school 90s Adidas shirt that I've had since I was in like high school because that's how we do it. All right, here's one of our entries. See if we can't go live. See here. Going live with Space Time. Going live with Delicious. Maybe? Yes.
All right, looks like all of us are on, huh?
Oh man, I feel like I pulled off a Christmas miracle. It's Miracle on 7th Street. Right on. Well, thank you guys all so much for joining me here today. This is kind of a new thing that I'm trying out. And to anybody who's new to my channel, my name's TK. This is my channel, TK and Drinks. And I've got 3 wonderful, fantastic mead makers here, and they've agreed to a kind of a roundtable discussion. We're going to bring up some topics. Hopefully we get some questions coming in from the audience as well. And overall, just have a really cool time hanging out with each other. So first thing I'd like to do is go around and do some quick introductions. Start with myself. Again, I'm TK, and this is my channel, TK and Drinks. I'm a recently new BJCP bead judge, assuming that all my stuff and paperwork comes in the 8-month time frame that they've given me, and recently started my home brews as well. So let's go down to my neighbor to the south here. Oh, is Dan frozen?
Oh, you said I'm to your east.
Oh, okay. Well, we've learned now. I've learned one thing. So to my south, let's go with Dan.
All right. Hey, I'm Dan Schreffler. I'm the yeast wrangler at Spacetime Mead and Cider Works. We're located in Northeast Pennsylvania.
Right on. And then let's go with my bottom right down here to be Jason.
I'm Jason Phelps. I'm the owner and mead maker for Ancient Fire Mead and Cider in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, to my right, Miss Anne Marie.
Hey, I'm Anne Marie. I'm with Elixir in Deland, Florida.
Awesome. So thank you guys all for joining me tonight. Oh, one thing I did want to also ask, is anybody drinking anything tonight? Oh, looks like Dan's got something. Let's go around that same order again. What you drinking there, Dan?
I'm drinking our Sangiovese Piments. I was having an Italian hoagie, so it was nicely paired. We did a little bit of rye whiskey barreling aging on this one.
Excellent. Yeah, so you got something there, and it looks like a paper cup, Jason?
It's actually a pottery cup. It's got beads on the outside of it. And awesome. I, too, am drinking a Piment. This one is from Syrah grapes with some French oak.
Very nice. And Miss Anne Marie, are you drinking anything tonight?
I've got nothing too entertaining. I got some lemonade. So I don't drink during the month of November, so this is my month of sobriety.
Hey, I love a good lemonade without any alcohol. That's like my favorite go-to summer drink. I tell you what, here in Phoenix, nothing beats a hot day like a cool glass of lemonade. And I am actually opening up a bottle I picked up the other day from the cats at Honey Pot out in California. It's a El Salvadorian honey traditional. If I can open it here. Oh crap, the freaking cork broke. I wonder how old this is. But it's a bottle of pole arm. So it says it's made with, it's a traditional made with El Salvadorian wildflower honey. And I read online this one's got some terrible reviews, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get it, because I'm trying to try all the traditionals and all the things and whatnot. So
did the reviews mention the honey? Is that the reason why they were panning it?
No, the reviews were all from Untapped, so it was a bunch of bros that gave it a bunch of crappy stars. Didn't like it. Stupid. Why would they make that? I'm never buying from these guys again. You know, you read them.
Gosh.
So nothing, absolutely nothing, nothing technical or anything like that. Definitely super hazy. reminds me of like a Zambezi honey or something like a wild like a bush honey or something. Very very earthy and kind of leathery. Ooh, like caramely and like toffee, but then has like a kind of like a earthy green note underneath of it. That's very interesting. I like that. I can see why people wouldn't, but they're, you know, only there for the berry bombs.
Yeah, that sounds unique. Like buckwheat. Like it sounds like something where people can have a love-hate with it.
Yeah, very much. There you go. That's a great example. It reminds me very much of like a buckwheat type of honey. So, I haven't seen any questions come up across there yet. So, one of the things that always interests me is, you know, how people deal with different difficulties in with their regions, like say storing honey. Like I know you up there in New Hampshire and Dan there in Pennsylvania, you guys probably have to deal with like honey heaters and all sorts of stuff in the wintertime. Maybe you not so much down there in Florida, Anne Marie.
No, we're lucky in that aspect.
So let's start with you then. What's a difficulty you think that you have regionally down there in the South that that these other cats might not have up there in the North?
I think one of our big issues here is temp control, although up north they probably have the opposite problem that we have. You know, we get some pretty hot summers, and up until very recently, you know, we're a fairly small operation. So up until very recently, we manage our temp control via ambient temp control. So that became very challenging in the summertime. This next summer, although it's pretty much always summer here, although it's really cold tonight. But this next summer we have you know, a full glycol system now. So this next summer is going to be really awesome. Now I don't have to deal with what the 100-degree days outside are going to do to my ambient temperature. So temp control is definitely challenging down here. And then the South just has really weird alcohol laws, so that's a challenge. Although alcohol laws are weird everywhere, the South does like to demonize alcohol. So we deal with some of that on a kind of a political side of things. But yeah, I think temp control is probably one of our big challenges, being in the South and, you know, where it's over 80 degrees most of the year.
Gotcha. And having been through that whole process with the size tanks that you guys have and just, you know, working with ambient temperature, what kind of tips would you give a home brewer in your area to help deal with if they're in your same situation?
So the nice thing about, you know, home brewing is you typically are brewing in smaller batches. It's much easier to manage temperature on a 5 or 10 gallon batch than it is on, say, a 50 or 100 gallon batch. So that is definitely a nice perk to being a home brewer. You know, although I've been really impressed with some of the small glycol systems that I've been seeing some of our my beer brewing homebrew friends that now are available for homebrew setups. It's pretty impressive. They definitely didn't have that when I brewed beer at home.
Right on. I'm always interested to see what new technologies are coming out to help the industry move forward. Dan, same question. You know, difficulties for your area. What do you think that you're dealing with there that, you know, you could help homebrewers out with?
Yeah, we're actually fairly temperate. I always advise folk to make with the season. So when it's really hot in August, and again, hot for us is not Florida hot, and it's a short duration. But I don't make anything in August. We just stay away. It's just you're fighting it. Although we have the advantage with, I mean, we're only doing 50 gallons to 75 gallons. But I found that thermal mass, it takes a while for it to really get in up to the danger zone anyway. So I think just because of our batch sizes, we have some tolerance. But generally, I won't make anything late July up until early September. And then we use it's just ambient temperature here, but it's fairly temperate. Pretty much the winery is, the high it might get is in the summer even it might be 81 inside with a small air conditioner in here, and the winter is pretty controllable too. So actually we like the fermentation temperatures here. Right now I'm just looking, it's 66 degrees now in the winery now, and that's what we like to try to maintain.
So Jason, when you're dealing with your same thing, temperature control and stuff. Do you guys specifically select your yeast there at Ancient Fire to go with, like, you know, based on ambient temperature and all that stuff?
Yeah, we definitely do. I mean, in the wintertime, because we don't heat our entire warehouse space nearly as warm as we would, say, the front of the house where we have our tap room, I'll set the heat at 58. I don't need to chill it in the wintertime, but I do in the summertime. And same thing, in the summertime, we'll change what we make. So for the most part, I'll make our lower ABV session product, which is a cool ferment anyway, so it'll go through a cool ferment. I'll let it come up to ambient temperature, but then it's gone in a week. You know, it's packaged and through the bright tank and into kegs. And then I'll start making honey wines again in late September and October once the ambient temperatures have come down. And then, I mean, we love it because it stays 58 to 60 degrees. That is awesome to sediment stuff out. Stuff is clear, crystal clear on the other side of wintertime because it's been nice and cool in there. So it's definitely an interesting situation because we can use it, but we get extremes as well. So, you know, we have to make sure the heat is on because obviously it'll just keep getting colder in there otherwise. Our chiller is inside, but it doesn't belch enough heat to make a difference. So our biggest problem up here, too, is the shortness of our growing season. If you think about anything we would make locally, we've got a much shorter time of year where stuff would be harvested, you know, from the ground, you know, outside here. So that's another thing to think about seasonally that would vary in a northern climate like ours.
And that leads me into one of my other questions, you know. So thinking about that in a seasonal and regional respect, you guys all seem to try to utilize your local ingredients as much as possible. Dan, what is that? Does that dictate what time of year that you make certain products, or do you, like, you know, squirrel up for the winter and then just make them as you need to do it?
Yeah, with fruit, we're trying to source fresh. So, I mean, the other half of our business is a cidery. So this is our grab as much cider juice or apple juice as possible and pear juice and fill out the tank. So, and also it impacts, we like to grab the late harvest honey too, because the late harvest or the fall honey around here, wildflower, is just beautiful because of the plants that are around. Our issue in Pennsylvania really is I like to make piments. I'm a grape wine guy as much as I'm a honey wine guy, and I can't get vinifera because anyone that's growing some Pennsylvania grapes has their own winery and they're making their own. So if I want a Pinot grape or if I want a cab grape or that, I'm almost begging the local winery, the vineyard, to give me a little chunk of it. So that's really is my issue. We're dominated by Concord and Niagara and Catawbas and all, and when there's nothing wrong with those grapes. But if I want to actually make something to really approach that grape wine drinker and show them that mead is just as sophisticated, that is my sourcing struggle. We're working on it. But that's probably our biggest problem at this point.
Gotcha. And what about you guys there in Florida, Emery? You guys would probably have a much more stable supply of, you know, local fruits and stuff.
Yeah, we try to work as locally as we like to source as locally as possible for our honey. Our current honey supplier, actually, I prefer the spring version of the wildflower honey as opposed to the wildflower honey that comes out a little later in the year here. So our honey supplier actually stores a lot of spring honey for us, so we have that available to us throughout the year. And then for our seasonals, we'll pick honeys that are available during those times of the year. You know, like we have a seasonal one right now this time with cabbage palm honey, which is a more fall a fall variety. And then we also have access to blueberry farms and things here in Florida, which are kind of new to kind of the Florida agriculture, that we have access to honeys during their seasons as well. But as far as our core products are concerned, we have that spring wildflower honey that's stored for us year round, so we have access to it year round.
Gotcha. We got a question coming in. Is the later in the year honey a darker honey? Just go
here in Florida,
it
is. Yeah, it's a little darker, a little earthier.
Gotcha. Jason?
Yeah, it definitely will be here too. Although that'll vary. I've seen late season honey around here come in like a regular light amber color and not really be noticeably darker, but then I've seen tons of it that's actually been considerably darker. We'll get some goldenrod. You'll get some stuff that has a ton of pollen in it. It's swimming in pollen, which is making it look cloudy rather than dark necessarily. But yeah, it varies a lot from the spring honey around here too, which can be really light or again be kind of normal light amber color as well.
And it's always going to depend on probably the variety of honey as well, as whether it's going to be dark or light based on that too, in and of their own, spectrum, so to speak. Back to you with that final question on that, utilizing local ingredients there. And from New Hampshire, do you guys do a lot of like maple meads and stuff up there, Jason?
That's definitely one ingredient that we do use. And we have, both New Hampshire and Vermont maple syrup. We've not actually gone so far as to bring syrup in from Canada because we don't actually need to. Although that's an area where people, if they hadn't had the stuff from either New Hampshire or Vermont, might recommend that. And it's like, okay, yeah, but and ours is somewhat similar because we've got a lot of the same forest up here. We released a number of meads recently where we've paired up maple with different fruits as a back sweetening, like a post-barrel action. One of our classic barrel-aged ones is actually a Bochet that we use maple in the initial ferment, but then we also use it for back sweetening with vanilla after it's been in a barrel. So real maple is so recognizable of a flavor to people that are from this area that, yeah, when you say it has maple syrup in it, people go hunting for what they know it should taste like. And it's so fun to see people find it in the mix of different honeys and fruit that we've often done it with, because we all know somebody who runs syrup too. So it's one of those things where we all know what it's like.
Right on. I'm dying to try some maple wines and some just anything other than that, something with fermented other than honey. Get into my mead journey. I've been specifically seeking out a lot of those, but talking with Anne-Marie, I believe, who's done a bunch of fruit wines in the past, if memory serves, and doing the maple. You guys doing the maple wines. There's so many different products out there. I need to really get out and try the whole variety.
Yeah.
But that being said, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we've made a couple of maple wines actually. A gentleman in New Hampshire was kind enough to share his secrets. So we made 100% Acer. We made an Acer, 100% maple syrup wine. We added a little bit of malic acid to it, because maple itself, you check the pH, it's only about 7. It's flaccid. That if you actually ferment it straight and just drink it, it's not an exciting drink.
Way too sweet.
Huh?
Way too sweet.
Yeah. But if you put it in a rye whiskey barrel for a couple months and think about it as a digestif and you're sitting at a fire pit or a cigar kind of a drink, it's really, really nice. We've actually had someone in the tasting room drink a whole glass. I was ready to have insulin for them. But we also do a semi-dry bordering on semi-sweet Acer Glen. If you could ferment maple syrup just as dry as you could, or sweet as you could do honey. So just control the water dilution.
Got you. So what sort of expectations, kind of shift gears here a little bit, what kind of expectations should new brewers have, like growing pains, when they're upsizing their scales? These cats there's some home brewers out there. We see a lot of them all over the forums and everything. Hey, I'm looking to open a meadery, and they're always asking what's the difficulties, what's the hardest thing, but like more of like, not so much what's the difficulties, but like what should they expect to run into along the way that they might not necessarily be thinking about, that difficult or otherwise.
Well, I could probably speak to that because we're going through a few of those growing pains right now. We're in the process of building a new production facility, and we just signed with a new distributor. So we have a lot of growing pains right now. I think one of the big things is expect to need things you don't expect. Expect things to cost more than you think. It's interesting to try to plan for equipment purchases and things like that, and then you get this budget in mind, and then you get the equipment, and then there's still $1,000 worth of little tiny things that you never thought about in the first place that's not in your budget, but now you have this piece of equipment that you need this in order to use, and 6 months down the line, it's all going to be well and good, but coming up with that money right now when you just shelled out this chunk of change for this piece of equipment, just things like storage. That's a big thing for us right now because we are not in our new space, but because we just signed with a new distributor, our demand has increased, which is an excellent problem to have. But right now, if you saw my living room right now, you would see my pool table piled with stuff and kegs in my living room is keg storage. So it's little things like that. Nothing ever moves as quickly as you think it's going to. So it's always kind of just plan for the unexpected, which is stupid advice because that's like the worst advice ever because that doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, growing pains happen and eventually they will go away and things will be great and grand. And that's what I keep telling myself. Just January, just wait till January and everything will be good.
Right. Anyway, Jason, Dan?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll take a slightly different approach, and I'll get back to why. Decide what you want to be. The biggest problem you're going to run into in starting any business, whether it's a meadery or a clothing shop or a nonprofit for that matter, is the people that are running it have to know what they want to do. You got to know who you want to be. You got to know what kind of company you want to be. You got to know why. You got to set some ground rules, especially if you're partnering with people that you're not necessarily associating with every day, like people you might live with, like a spouse. If you have other partners, everyone has to be on the same page about what you want to do because, as has been stated, anything will happen, and it definitely will. And you're going to need to be ready to cast a lot of things, especially early on, in terms of, okay, who did we want to be? How did we say we wanted to do this? What are the rules on this? What are the boundaries? Where do we want to do this? And the reason that I decided to start with that is because it leads you to potentially making really dramatically challenging decisions, which is actually where I find myself at. And the news that we've been sharing for the last 6 weeks, which is this weekend, is actually it for us. We're closing. Pandemic got us and we needed to make a tough decision, but we went back to our business plan, looked at who we said we wanted to be, some things that we decided we wanted to do, and we actually decided we still wanted to stay true to those things. And we decided we're not going to go borrow money right now. We're not going to leverage ourselves to actually continue to do this. It feels like we're being punished, but we actually feel like the punishment would be self-made if we actually made a bad choice here. And so know who you want to be so that every time you need to make a tough decision, you can remember that. And you should, accepting the whole issue of having to make horrible decisions from a choice of horrible decisions. Some days you don't get good decisions. You should be able to be all right. Every time you make one, you should be able to just keep churning ahead as long as you felt like you did it the way you would be proud to say you followed your own rules, I guess. So that's what I'll say.
That was fantastic and very well put. Dan?
Yeah, and I have to echo that. I mean, I always like when we do these going pro sort of sessions, and everyone focuses on making the mead. And at the end of the day, making the mead's 10% of it. It's noise. I mean, it's a hobby that we love. We figured out how to scale it up and make some fantastic product. But that's just 10%. It's really embracing the business side. And so when we opened up, our guiding principles were the first thing on the wall is how are we going to operate? What are the things that are going to guide us so we don't get pulled in any different directions and then decide to say no a lot of times. We said no to wholesalers like crazy because we knew we didn't want to be a wholesale shop, although people wanted it, but okay, I'm not about to sell this for 30% less than I'm going to do direct to my customers. So, but there's other folk that want to do that kind of thing and they'll scale up and do it appropriately, but you have to know yourself. Do you like to do accounting? We spend all this time talking about temperature controls and scaling up, but if you're running a meadery, that's easy. That's all the easy stuff. The hardest part is employees. Am I going to pay them benefits? Am I going to pay myself benefits? If I take a vacation, what happens? Do I have a 401k? Who's paying for my health care? Those are the big business decisions that people should really be thinking about when they talk about going pro. Everyone can make good mead, and you scale it up. It's just it's just scaling up, minor stuff. But you're buying that big chunk of equipment, and can I weld? Do I know how to make parts? Those are all the other things that really aren't, mead making 101.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't even really thought about. You become basically the maintenance guy, you become the finance guy, you become the general manager, you're the bus boy, the dishwasher, everything. I mean, you're from CEO down to janitor.
Well, that's my buddy down at another Honey Hole Winery. He goes, ask him, "You're the owner?" He goes, "No, I'm the head janitor today." That's what, but the mop and taking care of whatever else, which is cool. I mean, I love every second of that. But those are really the things that when people struggle, or you see the sad face on the mead maker, it's because they thought it was just stirring the honey and doing the ferment and pouring the drink, and that is so small of this business.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be the head mead maker on the very first day. You might be the head mead maker that day, but it's not going to matter as much on day 2. And you're going to realize that you're going to be like, oh, man. And they're going to be like, all right, so I need to give this job to somebody else. I got to hire somebody to do this right now. Not because you want to and not because the job isn't cool, but, yeah, it ends up being this crazy thing where it's just one part of it.
Yeah.
Go find a successful mead maker and then work for them. That's my advice.
Go find a successful mead. Are you hiring, Dan? No.
I have someone I'm apprenticing right now. He's someone who he came in and he brought his couple jugs of mead for the last year or two. And I said, all right, you want to learn how to do mead? I said, all right, you're going to work the tasting room and figure out what customers like and not like and expand your palate. And then I'll have you lift some heavy pails of honey later.
Yeah. One of the things that always struck me from our previous interview was, you had mentioned that you do a program there, or you had at least in the past, where you brought in like a home brew, or they won a competition and got to brew at the meadery. And I was like, man, that's really cool. You're like, no, it's not. I mean, yeah, it's cool, but it's like they're doing all the work. I think it's just like getting a free employee. They win a contest and I get a free employee for a certain period of time. That always made me chuckle.
Lifting 60 pounds for a day. So good job, guy.
I still think it's a cool concept and everything, but yeah, it's a nice twist from the other point of view. So when you're operating a meadery, though, or not even operating a meadery, I guess it works on all scales. When you're changing a process in your mead, say if you come across a mead and it's got a fault in it, or it's got a characteristic you don't like and you're trying to change it, would you change one thing at a time, trying to dial that in, or do you try to like figure out what it is and try to change any and all process that would need to be changed for that to take place? Anne-Marie?
I would say it probably depends on how much you're wanting to change. If it's just a little tweak, I would never change more than one thing at a time, just because then, if it's not right, then you don't know if it's because you tweak too much or if you just didn't get the problem. But if you have a concept and it doesn't turn out and it's not anywhere close, then I might be more inclined to scrap my first recipe and start over. But if it's just one little thing, maybe I need a different yeast for this particular batch. Maybe this variety of honey isn't quite right, or maybe it's the temperature that yeast is fermenting at. I would tweak one little thing at a time, just to make sure that I don't want to create more work for myself than I have to.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. Like, so I have my first mead that I made, and it was a Kvike yeast that I didn't get up to temperature, never got above like 85, maybe about 90 degrees. So I didn't get a lot of the extra esters and florals that I guess come out when it's at a higher temperature. I think it stalled out because it only got to about 11.5%. But it tastes. I use the mesquite honey, and I like the honey characteristic that came across. But it's just really boring. So, like, I feel like I might need to add some acidity to it or some tannins to it, just something to make it not boring. So, like, if I wanted to change one thing in my process, where would you think that would be a good place to start for someone like me in that case? Grab bag, whoever's open.
All right, I'll do it. I would actually finish the ferment. So the key with that one, like your concern that it didn't finish, there's probably two things there. One is conceptual, which is it probably should have gone farther. And potentially then technically the reason it didn't is because you didn't run it quite warm enough, and then it got down to sort of its low point temperature much, much sooner, so it wouldn't have attenuated nearly as much. So that would be the first thing I would do is try it again and finish the ferment, try to get it warmer. Or if the concept is of a fruity estered mesquite blossom mead, then same honey, but look for a different type of yeast, maybe an ale yeast that might actually be fruity, like a British ale yeast can often be somewhat estery as well, but that will also ferment till full attenuation at 65 degrees. So you wouldn't necessarily need to do anything different, but you could, and you're essentially tweaking the same thing. And I think it's a good example of separate your concerns between technical and creative, because you may end up wanting to change two things, but one from each category, because you can understand how the technical one is going to work, and the other one is, well, what if I tried that? The technical one is, if I run the right yeast at the right temperature, I should get full attenuation. We all have a sense that that's a thing we all want, perhaps, so that's much more straightforward to also say, well, I'm going to just use a different yeast and hope that maybe the fruitiness that I get out of it could be similar. Yeah, British ale yeast and Vike yeast isn't going to be the same thing, but at the same time, you're at least playing within the same concept.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that I would probably repitch the same yeast and probably get a bottle warmer or something and try to get that up a little, because I really want to start working with the Kvike yeast, just because out here in Arizona and in the summertime, like I said, I don't have that necessarily temperature control, and some days it was up there, but on average, it was definitely not high enough. So I do like the idea of repitching it, though, and see if I can't get another 3 or 4% out.
Definitely. And that's the thing, is that if you can make that happen, then at least you get to the end of it and say, okay, what should I have gotten out of it at full attenuation? Because you might find it continues to transform to a point where you're like, yes, that is what I actually want.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice. I think I'm going to go with that. Anything to add to that, Dan, or anything you would do different?
I mean, that's fantastic advice, and that, the separation between the two. If it's finished, or if the mead is finished as it's done, you can split small amounts, just put in a 750 milliliter bottle, add a little bit of acid, and see, does that make a difference? So a little bit of oak in another one, and see, that makes a difference. You don't have to commit the whole batch to these tweaks. You could pull a little bit on the side and do it on a wine bottle size experimentation. So you could do a lot of different experiments with that if you resolved your attenuation issue.
Gotcha. And I thought about doing that as well as doing like a bench trialing type of thing to see what it would do in different, different situations, different additives, different this, that, and the other thing. Anne-Marie, what do you do in that situation, or what advice would you give somebody who was,
I think you got really good advice from that. Repitching is always, that's always something. I will say that, my experience with higher gravity meads is probably not what everyone else's here is. We specialize in session meads. So I don't typically have an issue with things not attenuating and finishing out fermenting. So, but definitely, I mean, you knew your temperature was a little low, so you know what's correct.
Hey, I just like bouncing off of everybody, because more minds equals more power. That's the whole point of this thing, is meet our minds together and we can create something. How does that saying go? Create a sum that's greater than the part, a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Yep.
Exactly.
That is mead making, though, to be totally honest with you. It is absolutely mead making. I think that's creatively what attracts a lot of people to it, is you can add honey plus fruit plus other stuff, and it's not always going to be what you think. And sometimes it feels like it's more.
Right.
I let the wine tell me what it's going to be. I try to give it guidance, and I have hopes and dreams. It's going to be what it wants to be, and we'll figure out how to play with that and use it.
Right on. We got a question here from Northeast Kingdoms. Mead says, what's everybody's favorite fruits to work with?
I'm sorry, I missed that. What was that?
What's your favorite fruit to work with?
For us, it's key lime. We have a really excellent source of key lime down here, and one of our core meads is key lime, and it's the perfect mead by the pool or on the beach. We're in Florida. We need a beach mead.
I need some of your guys' beach meads for here in Phoenix. I'm dying. I'm gonna have to make a trip up there this summer, soon, and grab some and bring them back with me because I'm dying to try your guys' stuff. Jason, what's your guys' favorite fruits to work with? You guys have a whole cornucopia of stuff you guys make there.
Well, one of the ones that we've really enjoyed using, and we've only got to use them a couple times, is there's actually a couple of cherry trees right in on the island along the parking area at the meadery. So they were planted by the owners of the building, whose sons actually own the business that owns the piece of it that we're actually in. And when we moved in 2017, they're like, "Oh yeah, those are tart cherries over there," and we pick them, and usually a ton of them goes to the birds. And I said, "Well, you let me know when you're done," because there's not going to be anything left. And this year, the employees got in on it like 3 or 4 Fridays in a row. The trees just kept producing, so employees were climbing up ladders and pulling cherries down. So tart cherries are just a lot of fun. They got a lovely flavor, and then the tartness is just a fun addition. I call it a texture. It's a great texture to work with because you got to put stuff with that to really make it taste good and be able to use the tartness to create that pucker factor with the outcome. So that's one of our favorites.
Right on. Dan, I'm assuming yours is going to be grapes.
No, actually, it's not. I do enjoy. I enjoy pie mints. But really, if I had to pick a favorite, and probably because I really like dark chocolate, it's raspberry. And a raspberry honey wine blend. We've actually we fermented raspberries fairly bone dry, blended with a sweet honey wine, and it's really it's still my favorite mead that we make. And we have a nice Dunmore Candy Kitchen is 6 blocks away. They make a big, beautiful chunk dark chocolate, and at the end of the night, a little piece of that and a little glass of the raspberry, and the dreams are fantastic. So that has to be my favorite.
Yeah, that raspberry is something else. Otherworldly, my man. That is phenomenal. So what would you say you guys individually at your meaderies there do differently and like not just like in a different process, but like what do you do differently in the meat industry that nobody else really does, or it kind of makes you unique in your own way? Anybody want to step up to bat?
I think I touched on it a little bit just a second ago. I don't know, that definitely makes us unique, but we do focus on more session meads. Meads that are more in tune with the Florida climate. While I can appreciate a high gravity mead, it just doesn't necessarily have it's not necessarily in demand where we're at. We make meads you can drink by the pint, not by the shot. And I think in if we were in a different climate, then we might have our focus somewhere else. But for us, it's most of our meads are under 7% alcohol. Most of them are dry to semi-sweet. So we're kind of on that side, that spectrum of mead, which there's not a ton of meaderies out there doing that. At least not in my experience. I'm sure there are more out there doing what we do than I'm aware of. But we're kind of on the lighter side of the mead spectrum.
Gotcha. Dan?
Yeah, I'm like, we're 3 years old. I'm all over the place. So I don't know if I don't think I'm doing anything that different than what probably 10 other meaders are doing. The fact is there's so few meaderies around. So how do we differentiate ourselves? I think there's common stuff I've stolen, borrowed, or begged from how many other meaderies. I think we probably have a fairly large selection of meads. We probably have about over 30 different things on the shelf right now. So maybe sheer types that we're offering, but I don't know if we're doing anything that unique that some other meadery is not doing. We haven't had a look to differentiate ourselves from other meaderies simply because there's really no one else in our neighborhood. It's a drive, you're talking about an hour and a half drive to the next meadery from us. So I'm not convinced we're doing anything special other than we're doing it in Dunmore, Pennsylvania.
Jason?
So I think for us, it probably was our focus on varietal honey. So from the beginning, we started with our Makers series, which was our session or our draft style meads. Every single honey that we worked with, there was a family of meads we made from it. The family was anchored by the single honey version of it. So that was really fun for people to explore because they could start to understand underneath the other flavors within the same family of meads, here was this base mead that they could also taste, so they could kind of appreciate why in the world would they have put Concord grape with this one versus raspberry with this one. And then you start to drink them, you say, oh, okay, yeah, I can kind of understand, like these feel like they belong together more so than maybe these other ones would. And then in our honey wine series, and you know, unfortunately, we've only been able to release 7 in the way that we did it. But we did 7 different varieties, and the same thing as a teaching tool to help people appreciate what can this honey made into mead of its own thing, no additional ingredients. And for the varietal series, rarely, if more than just a small amount of back sweetening is a balancing. So just trying to, again, make it a really straightforward fermented honey experience for people. I think that that's what set us up differently because we had a honey tasting bar, so you could go taste the honey too. So we kind of created a classroom, and our tap room actually kind of looks like a classroom because we've got fluorescent lights and a drop ceiling. So, you know, people are like, oh, this is interesting. You know, yes, absolutely. You know, people said to us, you kind of have like a mead classroom, like a honey classroom here. And I'm like, sure, all right. I mean, if that's what you think. But it kept people coming back. So.
Gotcha. That's I like the different unique things like that people have. Like you were saying, you have a honey bar there to go with your traditionals that you're brewing up there. That's a very cool concept. And then like you said with the family of meads, man, it's a shame you guys are closing down your doors because and I cry for the rest of the world. I'm happy for you guys to go do what you want to do, but I cry for the rest of the world because now we don't get to keep drinking your delicious libations.
I totally appreciate that. And for us, I mean, honestly, we feel like what we've done has influenced enough people that there's no way that it won't have lasting benefit to have done what we've done beyond all the fun that we've had. This has still been fun. It was just, that's the pivotal problem, is it went to a place where it wasn't anymore. And it just, you know, we decided that we needed to remember that that's what we wanted this to be when we started it. And, you know, that not being the case, you know, so we have to be able to do that. But I know that we've shown enough people, especially in our own area, like I would actually venture to say that any local competition, I think the game's probably been raised. If people are going to be coming to you, they're going to be asking for something specific, and they're going to be asking for a lot. Teaching them about honey made them a very, very difficult consumer to actually please because they have a clue what you're talking about. You know, you got to. So, I mean, if we're not satisfying it for them, somebody's going to have to. So I'm assuming that this is going to put pressure on people to continue to be creative with honey, which is what got us into it in the first place.
Growing fellow in Sap House, you better watch out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and our fans all know each other too. That's what's crazy about it too, is we have people that know each other that love all the meaderies in our region. And so I think they'll continue to talk to each other about who makes what. Like this thing I used to like, who makes it? Does somebody have something like it?
Yep. So, you know, now that's going to be, you know, unfortunately not going to be a thing anymore. Anne-Marie, where do you see like the industry going in 5 or 10 years? You know, we've lost some cats. We got a whole bunch of new cats coming in. You guys are one of those newer cats. Where do you see the industry going in the next 5 years, you know, 10 years?
Like to where I'd like to see it go. I mean, I think that as the industry grows and meaderies are these little islands in around the country, you know, as you start to get more and more meaderies clustered together, you start to get a little bit more of that community, that conversation, that collaboration going. And I think, you know, I've got a background in craft beer, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about craft beer when it first started, is that you had a lot of collaboration, and there was this kind of this team mentality of, you know, we as a a segment of the alcohol industry, you know, we need to band together in order for us to do better and do well and to grow. And I think as the mead industry gets to a point where there's not, you know, state lines between meaderies, where you have more and more meaderies that are kind of clustered together, you're going to start, I hope we're going to start to get some of that that collaboration and community that will then help the industry grow even more and even faster.
Yeah, I like the idea of collaborations outside your, you know, you say your state lines, you know, your region, something like that. Being able to bring two different whole, you know, plans, different, you know, attack patterns, whatever you want to call it, two different concepts together, and like you said, support each other in a fashion. Because like you said, the beer world, that's all they do. I mean, everybody's got a collaboration this, collaboration that, 3-4 cats collaborating. And that's one of the things I would love to see from the mead industry is some more big collabs from anybody, like small cats, big cats, everybody. To me, it doesn't matter. Oops. There we go.
All of our collaborations were with local breweries in New Hampshire. That was we you know, we couldn't make honey beer because we're not a brewery. So we figured let's partner with them to make honey beers that's interesting for their audience as well, but it brings what we do to the party. And I mean, the brewers were fascinated by it as well. Most of them never brewed with honey before. So they're immediately like, okay, tell me about this. Tell me how this actually works. And I'm like, it's brewing sugar. What do you, like, it's not that, just liquefy it. It's not that big a deal. And they're like, well, yeah, but how do I know what's what? I'm like, that's the thing. You didn't know about brewing malt and and other ingredients when we first started. You had to learn. I'm like, that's the key. And then it's fun to walk them through different types of honey and talk about different types of beer you can make with that honey, because you can parallel flavors, you can oppose flavors and aromas, you can do all kinds of fun stuff with it. So yeah, the beer community has been great to partner with on our end.
And Dan, you've partnered with a winery there for several collabs, correct?
Yeah, we've done the winery and a brewery. The collaboration with the winery is the one I had apprenticed with, and he's just a master grape man. And I learned so much, because when you talk about and I always cringe when we talk about people saying brewing mead. It's like, no, we're winemakers. Let's embrace that already. We're winemakers, and because there's so much history and techniques that we should be leveraging in that space, and to get, you know, clean ferments and how to filter, clarify, all that stuff is really, they're winemaking techniques. So the collaborations are natural. In fact, we just this past Saturday in Atlantic City, we got best of class for collaboration lavender at the American Wine Society. So we were pretty happy with that, and that was his idea, because I did not want to do a lavender mead. I was so lavender, and it turned out brilliant. Yeah. So. And then from the beer community, Hopping Eagles, a small brewery that started a couple of years ago, and we made a porter braggot. And like, I don't have the license, right? We can't make a braggot, but he could come close, and it was fantastic. So those are fun. It challenges us to try to think about different flavor profiles with different grains, even, and then working together, and that promotes both entities. Both wineries, both breweries, and the meadery too. So those are fun, and well worth doing.
Right on. And have you guys done any collabs there, Anne-Marie, or you guys?
Yeah, we've done a few with a couple local breweries, and we're kind of in talks with a couple new ones. You know, we just got into with a new distributor, so we're in different markets now than we've ever been. So that's kind of put us in front of a couple of other local breweries that we have always wanted to do collaborations with. So now we're finally in the talks. So 2022 is going to definitely, there'll be a few brackets showing up in 2022. So, and we also collaborate with a local coffee roaster and a local tea producer also for two of our meads, where we showcase those products pretty significantly in a couple of meads we do. So we like to collaborate with not just breweries, but also some of our other beverage producers in the area. And we have a couple new meaderies that are popping up not too far from us here in hopefully in the next couple months. So hopefully we'll be able to do some collaborations with them as well.
Yeah, that's cool. I like the collaboration on the botanicals and the adjuncts and stuff too, because that's it's another way of, exposing more people, like Dan was saying. You're exposing more people to more products in your areas. It's teaming up to use your guys or your customers to help their customer base, or bolster their customer base, and back and forth. And I think it's just a great idea, and a huge fan of.
You're also bringing in an expert.
Go on.
You're also bringing in an expert. I didn't know about chocolate. We contacted a company that had reached out to us about samples for cocoa nibs and said, tell us a little bit more about these. We want to know, what do these really taste like? What are your extended
the lessons we learned on coffee in the last couple of years. I didn't even know coffee could possibly be as complicated as it is. But it's really fun talking with someone who has the same passion about what they do as I have about what I do. And it's neat to get together and collaborate and talk in the kind of that same artistic and scientific level, but just with different medium.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Anytime you can nerd out with somebody on the same level about equal things, that's super awesome. So what do you think that meaderies that are upcoming can do to help better the mead community as a whole? The new up and coming cats that everybody is always talking about, like we were saying, talk about separating yourselves by being different, everything. But what should these meaderies be doing to help better the mead community as a whole?
Make good mead.
That was what I was going to say too. Make a good product.
Please. We've had an error.
And be willing to educate, and be willing to educate happily. So sometimes you get the same, 4 questions all the time, and it can get tiresome. But you have to, mead is something that not a lot of people have been exposed to, and you have to be able to happily educate your consumer and be open to them not being open to what you're trying to, and giving them the opportunities to experience your product. In a kind of a safe way, a safe space, not with no judgment. We get people all the time, oh, I've had mead, I don't like mead. My first question is always like, okay, where and when? Or where and what? Where did you have it and what did you have? Right. Okay, sit down with me and let me show you what we do, and let me show you what mead can be. It's not just what you had at that, Renaissance festival or at that Game of Thrones party. There's a whole world of mead out there, just like there's a whole world of wine out there, and just like there's a whole world of beer out there. And I think that going into it, you really have to be open and willing to take that extra time and educate your consumer, because then they're going to go out and they're going to educate their friends, and their friends are going to educate their friends, and then maybe we'll get to that point in the industry where mead is as synonymous with what we do as IPA is in the beer industry. Someone goes in and orders an IPA, everyone knows exactly what they're ordering because it's become so well known. And I would love to see, the understanding of mead and the different styles within mead to have that same understanding, in the future. And I think being willing to do the education and do that work that is involved is extremely important.
Yeah, I'll speak to the work and the time. You got to be willing to put the time in. I've been at this almost 20 years in one form or another. It doesn't matter how many times you look at somebody else's process for making mead. It is not just a set of steps. You can't just repeat certain actions mindlessly over and over and over and over again, and necessarily just expect it magically just all going to work out. You can eventually systematize making large amounts of certain types of mead if you want to, but I don't think anybody that starts out at a small scale really believes that's their goal anyway. So I think ultimately putting the time in to make sure that you're continuing to follow a good process, but also be receptive to whatever's actually happening, in the environment you're making this product in. So ultimately, having been a judge for over a decade now too, a home brewer for 15 plus years before a commercial one, I'll be honest, it's actually hard to make a good product and to know that you've got a product that's ready to go out to the marketplace. It's and the reason that is now is that every day that passes, people are less patient for the time to have to pass for that to become true. It's not because we don't have technology making things better. It's that we have this continued belief that technology is going to cut the time down it takes to do anything well. And this is a handcraft. There's only so much optimization you can make in it before you actually take the love and the passion out of it. So you're tugging, you got two things tugging at each other. So it's hard to know you actually have a good product. And time is one of those factors, but time and good feedback, you start realizing, oh, okay, yeah, this is turning into something. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't necessarily like to hear about the time component because it seems painful. I got to wait, how long is that going to take me? Well, it really depends. It depends on how good of a learner you are. I mean, the more you learn, the more you synthesize, the more you spit back into the efforts that you're doing, and the more results you get from that you actually see moving you in the positive direction. Yeah, the quicker it's going to happen, but still, it's not overnight. And that sometimes is a really harsh reality for people to grasp, that you do have to have that to be successful, because the business part of this business is going to keep you so busy that unless your mead maker is somebody who doesn't do the business stuff, that person's not going to be able to learn how to do it when you're launching a business. You got to know how to do it, which means you got to know you have a good product, and you got to know how to do that. And that unfortunately takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I would imagine that there's a lot of sense of, I would say, call it false confidence maybe, or being victim of like yes men, people in your life that just care about you and just tell you your product is good just because they care about you. And there's a lot of people I think there's a lot of people out there that could probably benefit from some true criticism of their stuff, beyond their immediate circle of friends. There's a lot of homebrewers that have poo-poo away from the homebrew competitions and these types of things, but they could really benefit from and it doesn't matter which competition, just a critical eye on their product. And
I'll put it this way: the more serious you are, the more you want that. Anybody who doesn't want it, assume they're not serious, because you can't know just yourself. When I made some good stuff early on, I didn't know it just because I thought it was good. I had to hand it to a whole bunch of people. I had to look at them and watch them while they were drinking it. I had to understand, okay, this person's not really digging it, or this person is. It wasn't automatic. So anybody who really doesn't like feedback, yeah, they're probably not that serious. I'll throw that gauntlet down. I'm not afraid.
Fair enough. Oh, Dan's upside down. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
My battery's going, and I was trying to plug it in, and I'm going through all the silliness now. Sorry.
It's all good, man. Just a quick chuckle. That's all. So speaking on kind of what you were saying there, previous, about losing the love when you can only put your love and energy into so much. Do you think there's a point when it gets too much, where it becomes more of a machine than it becomes a craft and a passion?
I don't believe you can avoid that if you assume you're going to grow forever. And I think that's actually when you start thinking that through, you start realizing, yeah, there's definitely a challenge there. There's a possibility, as the person who launched this, you may become distanced enough from what originally started you for it that, yeah, you might not get the days of loving it the way you did when you first started. You got to find something else to love about it. You got to find the outcome of the people who work for you. You got to find the interactions that they have with your customers and how that changes your business. You got to find that to be equally rewarding to continue on with it. But yeah, it will absolutely change. It has to, if you're going to assume you're going to continue to grow, because you can't be in the details every day. If you're going to try to grow a bigger company, you're going to be running your company, and you're going to have other people that are going to have had that opportunity that you had from day one, walking in your footsteps, playing that role for you. while you work on, whether it's a new distributor, a new facility, who knows what it is. So it will definitely change.
Yeah, I think once you start adding in all the business aspects and, getting into distribution and playing that politics game that goes with the alcohol industry as a whole, it can get draining, and it's definitely not the same as when you were a home brewer making mead for your friends. And I think it's important to be able to recognize when that happens, and then, like you said, go back and find that thing about what you do that you love so much, and do that a little bit more, and focus on that for a little bit, so you can remind yourself why it is you sit down and you file those reports every month, and why it is that you have distributor meetings every month, and why it is you put yourself through that, because the business side of it, I think this is for all artistic industries. The more artistic you are, the worse you are at business. And because I think it takes a different mindset and a different way of thinking on both aspects of that. But in order to be successful, you have to tackle that business side of things, and sometimes it can get tedious, and you just have to expect it. You have to have a plan in place for when it happens. You have to be able to pull yourself out of that rut, and remind yourself what it is you love about making this product for the world.
Gotcha. Do you think there's room, or not necessarily room, but like, are meaderies on all scales necessary? Do we need these big Goliath meaderies out conquering the world, so to speak, or would it be better served to focus on the craft aspect of it and do the service better that way?
I mean, it depends. I think you have to just ask yourself, how do you define success? We decided we're not going to be a big distributing house, because the best advice, I got 2 pieces of advice from a brewery that they ramped up quickly. They did the distribution route. They were making a lot of beer and only making pennies on a bottle. So keep it close, keep the most, keep it small, keep it all. And that's the mode I'm going in. We will not be working with the distributor ever, because we're not going to put those tanks in. We want to know our customer base. We want to do almost the one-on-one, but that's us. That's my choice as a business. If someone wants to grow big and be the next InBev of Mead or whatever, that's great too. But you have to define what that is for yourself. For me, my situation is this is a retirement business. I did the hard work in corporate America. I don't need to do it again. I need to pay, it needs to pay for itself, make some money for the family, but I will not be killing myself trying to service 20 distribution accounts and how many different bars and that. I want to talk to the customers, let them come in. At the same time, I'm not running a bar or restaurant either. We made that decision. We will not have food, and it's you come in, sample, go. Ideally, buy is a step in there too, but that's us, because I don't want to run a bar. I mean, that's just not something, but and for us it works. If you want to try our product in a sit down situation, I'll send you the Hopping Eagle, or I'll send you the other, one of the 2 places that we actually do some wholesaling at. But that's a tough choice, because sometimes you get sucked into that. Oh, I have to expand. Boy, cancer's an expansion of the body too. We don't want that. So you have to really make a decision on how for yourself, what are your priorities, what are your guiding principles at the beginning.
This is a very complex conversation. Very complex, because here's what I will tell you. If mead is going to have household appeal like other types of products do, including some that didn't exist traditionally, somebody on grand scale is going to have to do it, because you're going to need to satiate some part of the population who will drink that, maybe as a novelty in the beginning, maybe as a cultural force after that, but they're not going to look at it as a craft option, and that's not how they're going to want to interact with it. So what's it take to get there? Some time, but then what's the landscape left for everybody else? Lots and lots of opportunity. But I guess I'll throw another gauntlet down. Nobody should think you're starting a business in mead for any other reason than you believe you want to be in the mead business. Nobody's getting rich doing this. That's not a reason to do it. Nobody's really moving the dial on any cultural, social change necessarily just by starting a meadery. But you can do a lot of good with a company like you can with any kind of business you can do in your local area when you do that. So you really have to want to do it, and you really want to have to see it become something that, you know, isn't just about the mead. Or again, yeah, you're going to grow forever, and you're going to think about big tanks, and you're going to think about distribution, and you're going to think about, you know, trying to conquer the world with it. But, you know, who's drinking that can or that bottle of mead now? Do you even know who they are? Ultimately, you have to decide, is that the kind of business you want to be in? I think a lot of people see opportunity in mead right now because they hear professionals talk about there aren't that many nearby. I mean, I happen to have two also in New Hampshire in a state of, you know, a population of 1.3 million. One of them happens to be Moonlight Meadery. It's a very recognizable name in the mead world. You know, their primary location is 10 minutes from mine. I actually live closer to the meadery than the owners do. We've known them for over a decade because they came out of our homebrew club, you know, where we joined, you know, years after they had been involved. You know, so there's definitely meaderies around. It depends on where you're at. So people hear that there's opportunity. Yeah, there's opportunity, but translate that into what? There's opportunity to work really, really hard to do something that you're personally passionate about. That, unfortunately, because it's largely unknown, you're going to have to convince people that they want. That's the opportunity. I don't hear dollar signs dripping all over that. So I think people really just need to understand, like, if you want to be passionate about it, don't be passionate just because you make good mead. Be passionate because you believe that you can actually create a place where people can come and hang out. You can donate some of your profits back to local nonprofits. You can create jobs and hire great, cool, creative people that can actually help you find new opportunities to start other businesses or help other people start other businesses. Those are the opportunities that you have with doing this. I don't know that people should be focused on an opportunity to grow a massive meat industry, because I'm not sure that most of us will be that massive meat industry.
Yeah, don't ruin a good hobby. Work for someone else. Take the day off and make some mead. I mean, why have a headache?
Yep.
Yeah. Anne-Marie,
yeah, I mean, if you work from home, make meat at lunch.
Yeah.
If you're working at home, make meat in the kitchen in the hour you're off for lunch, and then go back upstairs. And you're literally doing both at the same time. Not trying to convince anybody not to get into it. Just, you know, again, I've been asked these questions before. I'm always honest. You got to want to do it. And what you want to do needs to be a bit more complex than, I think I need to sell this mead that I make that everybody tells me is good. That's one piece of it.
Anne-Marie, what do you think? Do you guys want to become a Goliath in the industry? Do you see yourself staying trapped? I mean, what's the...
I'm going to focus on just the state of Florida for right now. Talk to me in a few years.
Fair enough. But it sounds like, I mean, all three of you you all bring a very well-rounded business mind to it. You're all still passionate about what you do. And, you know, like, Dan, obviously you wouldn't go as out of your way to go and learn a winemaking trade that a lot of people consider a beer making trade if you weren't passionate about what you were doing, and stay in a town where there's a bunch of winemakers. You know what I mean? You converted old Italian winemakers to drinking mead, man. I think that's a very cool thing to do, you know. And
yeah, and I'm not saying what I'm saying to dissuade anyone, but I've just seen some miserable, actually I've seen miserable looking winemakers, miserable looking brewers, and miserable looking mead makers and cider makers during their first couple of years, because they had no perspective that it's a business and not just a fun hobby. And I'm just trying to head that stuff off, because at the end of the day, they ended up not making some very good product, which then reflects poorly on those who want to actually try to make some money on this thing.
Right. It's like, and I guess that comes kind of full circle to what you guys were all saying about what's the best thing that these new meaderies can do is make a good product, take the criticism when it, you know, constructive criticism when it's offered to you, and advocate strongly for the market as a whole, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, as a home brewer, homebrewing anything is not a cheap hobby, technically. If you've gotten into it and you've been into it for any period of time, you recognize, oh, wait a minute, I'm just going to spend money like crazy here if I'm not careful. So
Right.
the reality of it is that you're invested in it. Make a bunch of stuff, but learn how to recognize when things haven't gone well, because you need to focus on how to fix that and not how to dress up something that didn't go well and try to convince yourself that if that happened in a commercial environment that you could dress some product up and convince people that you could drink it, because you can't. And if you've never thrown anything away as a home brewer before because you just can't stomach the idea, then you can't really be super critical about what you've actually done. Because if you have objective flaws that are just straight up nasty and horrible and you can't face that, then when it happens in a commercial setting, you're going to be too worried about your potential losses. And I mean, I've had my share in the last couple of months alone with some other fun stuff that's happened along the way. And what I'll tell people is forget about your retail loss. Just look at your cost. How much did it cost you? What does a 50-gallon batch of mead cost you? That's all you're out. You didn't sell it, you're right, but that's all you're out. And do you have enough money to try it again? And if you do, then you might be able to recover the cost. Yeah, you'll eat the margin, on the second batch for the first. But you got to learn how to make difficult decisions. And a lot of times in competition, I've seen stuff, get sent in where I think people are very convinced that it's not what it actually is. And you definitely don't want to do that in a commercial setting. You get a reputation. You won't find it online either. That's the thing. A lot of times when people realize it's not that good, people talk amongst friends. That's not on Untappd. That's not here. That's not there. You will never even hear it, but they won't come back.
Gotcha. Anne Marie, you've been a mead judge as well for quite a while. Do you see the quality of homebrew specifically like in crew? I don't know when the last time you've judged was, but just, over the years as a whole, would you say you've seen homebrew quality improving overall?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think, especially, the homebrewing community, it's an awesome community of people. And, back when I was a home brewer and we'd have our homebrew meetings and people would bring product in, they would bring a batch in, and we would always encourage them, don't just bring us your good stuff, bring us your bad stuff too, because you're going to learn more from the bad batches than you're going to learn from the good. You're going to learn more from, if you bring us, something that just tastes absolutely horrible and learn what it is you screwed up. You're going to learn more from that than bringing us something that tastes awesome and us just telling you it tastes awesome. And I think that community fosters that, and everyone wants everyone else to make good beer and good mead and good wine. And so I think there's a lot of kind of community education, and there's a lot of information out there. And there's a lot of new technology for homebrewers where they can really kind of mimic more of a professional brewing environment with, home labs and, mini glycol chillers and, manual can seamers. And there's so much out there for the home brewer now that they really have the technology that professional brewers have to a smaller scale, that they're able to have a more technically sound product. Not just something that they got lucky on the science side of it. They're able to actually test things, and test their pHs and test all these different things, and check their cell counts on their yeast starters. Things that maybe 15, 20 years ago only a handful of people did. It's just more accessible now, and I think with that you're getting more technically sound homebrew out there.
Dan?
No, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to add much more than what's already been said. Yeah, I want people to bring their bad stuff in so we can all learn.
Yeah, definitely. I was fortunate that a guy reached out to me and said, "Hey, cool, you went to Mazer Cup. You mind if I, reach out to you and get some opinions on my stuff?" I'm like, man, I'm not really anybody. I just went to one competition, everything, but I've try to be as helpful as I can and everything. And, I try to just give them the advice that I've learned from everybody else. Get your basics under control, get your temperature control get your temperature under control, make sure you're using decent yeast, make sure you're using nutrients, whatever type of addition, no more vitamin or no more ferment R, no more raisins, and and just get back, just do all the basic stuff to help bring up the quality of your product, and that's the advice I'm trying to take away from what everybody else is saying is, just do the basics, minimal control changes, and get critical feedback from people who are going to give you honest, decent, critical feedback.
Enter those competitions.
Yeah, and I think do it often enough, do it frequently enough that you're actually learning about what you're doing. I mean, I think I've come across concepts that are crazy, just all an intersection of a ton of ingredients, way too much stuff sometimes. And I don't think that person's made that more than once, because if they had, they would have done it differently a second time for sure. And that's just one of those things. Like, if you have something that you're stupid passionate about, that you're wicked attached to as a concept, well, then figure out how to make it and make it awesome. But don't just make it once and hope that everyone's going to love it. I mean, the analogy I'll make is all the people online that, like, all right, I committed to make a mead for my sister's wedding. It's got to be available in 6 months, and it's got to be awesome. How do I do that? I'm like, well, luck is about 99% of what you're talking about. So, you know what I mean? I don't really know how to help you from there, because the 1% that I could help you control, like, yeah, you got time to learn how to make mead, but you don't have a lot of time to make a bunch of mead, and you might need to do that because you might screw it up a couple times. Right. And people never want to hear that. And I'm like, oh, geez, you gotta experiment. You gotta be willing to dig into it. And unfortunately, like someone learning how to cook, sometimes you end up making that same dish over and over again a bunch of times to the point where you're sick of eating it. You finally make it good, and you're like, I never want this ever again. This is horrible. I've had it 30 times. It's so. I think it's one of those things where people just need to decide, like, if you really love an idea and you want to turn it into something, then you got to figure out how to do it, and it can almost always be better. I don't want people to think that that's a new dragon to chase, like, oh my God, I can always make this mead better. But there's usually, at least after the first time you've done it, there's usually a chance you can make it better. And then it might be one of those things where you might find the appropriate place where that mead is perfect just the way it is, and then, okay, I got to move on to some other idea that I can keep me busy in that kind of tinker type of way. But dig into it, really, really get into it if you want to love it.
And go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, and I would say too is I know a lot. We get a lot of folk coming in, bringing their meads in, and it's always these crazy flavors. It's pineapple, sweet meads, or whatever it is, and I challenge them, make a traditional dry, because there's nothing to hide. It's when I first started making beer, my goal was ultimately to make a good American light lager, because there's nothing to hide behind that. IPAs you could bury with hops or whatever. You could hide a lot of flaws with paint, as they say in the carpentry business, and the same thing. So if you really think you're getting good at making mead, try to make a couple traditional dries or semi-off dries or something along that line, and see if you could really nail that. Because sweet, you could cover a lot of flaws in that. So, and that's where if you're comfortable doing that, then you might actually feel more comfortable than doing the experimentation with passion fruit or whatever flavor du jour there happens to be.
Yeah, agreed 100%. That's why I wanted to stick with traditionals, at least for the foreseeable future, because there's so many different, there's just with honey and yeast and the water itself, there's so many different combinations and variables that can come from that, and how you mix them together. To me, it's like there's a whole universe that's being, let's say, forgotten about, but underutilized, underappreciated. And a lot of people just, again, I see all the different forums and comments in the different groups and stuff, and it's, this is my first mead. It's like you were saying, it's a pineapple, raspberry, chipotle with 4 different types of honey, and then I aged it on French and Hungarian oak for 9 months. And it's like, would you even know if that was bad? Do you know what any of those ingredients are supposed to taste like fermented? Would you know what the difference between Hungarian oak and French oak is if, with these ingredients? I mean, hey, look, everybody's do you, but I mean, to me, that's just, I feel like I would be doing the industry a disservice to try to produce something. And like you said, you might get lucky. Hey man, even a broken VCR the clock is right twice a day. You know what I mean? So you do get lucky occasionally, but yeah, no, I traditional. It just stick with the basics.
Yeah, or at least, I mean, when I was teaching beer making, it was also make what you know. Don't go crazy. If you like IPA, right, make an IPA. If you like stouts, make a stout, but don't make something you're not familiar with. At least have some, so you can at least judge for yourself whether or not you nailed it, or at the start, at least some hope of some objectivity there.
Right. And Anne-Marie, do you guys send your guys' stuff to competition?
We don't. The stuff that we make doesn't fit neatly in a box. So we haven't really entered anything into competition, although I have been encouraged this year to, or I guess next year now, to do some Mazer Cup entries. So there'll probably be some in 2022. We'll probably enter a few competitions with some of our more traditional, our traditional meads. We just don't make a lot of traditional meads. We're kind of out of the box brewers, but we do a couple traditionals throughout the year. So those will probably find their way to a competition or two.
Gotcha. And you guys all are, have been brewing for a while. Dan, I'm not sure you've been brewing quite as long as these other two, but would you say that people who are making meads or out winning medals with their meads need to go around and judge meads as well? Stop sending their meads off to competitions to win the same medal 2 or 3 or 4 times, and start judging those competitions and help increase the quality of the mead pool around them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably one of those guys that should be doing what you just described. Yeah, I've only stewarded a couple, actually, and I judge our local one, but it's not the same as, I mean, down the road we have the Keystone Hops and the Lehigh Valley Homebrewers that have been doing it for decades, and I've only stewarded for them twice, and none of it during my commercial time. Now I'm only this many years old here commercially, so I'm still figuring a lot of stuff out. We enter it because I want the professional feedback. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, the customer feedback, voting with their dollars, is probably more important. But at least to be judged by my peers that we're actually making some quality, because Dunmore and Scranton learning what mead is not exactly learning what mead can be. So judging is important. But yeah, I have to give back by going down and sitting and judging those competitions. I'm not one to get BJCP certified. I have a whole career of milking a 2-year degree in comp sci to get where I am. I'm not going to school. I'm going to CiderCon, and I signed up to be a certified pommier just to force me to read the books. I'm not expecting to actually do the test. That's just me, not me. That's just the way I am. But
Gotcha.
we should, as professionals, if we can help our local homebrew, our local wine community, whatever the organization is that promotes amateurs to grow their skill set, whether or not they want to be professional or not, just so we could all learn. Because that's how I started 13 years ago. My local homebrew community was down the road and it's like, whoo, I'm going to make beer, yay. And I learned so much, and then gave back by teaching and doing talks and discussions. But I haven't followed through, I would say, in the last couple of years as a professional to give that back in that regard. So now I have to do that. I'm going to put that on my list now.
Hey, there we go. I can dig it.
So the question you ask is, should people do it?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's actually the right question, because I don't think it actually accounts for the fact that there are exceptions in all kinds of circumstances.
Sure.
What I will tell you is that what people should do is should consider, in the next round of what you want to do, where do you think you're going to learn the most? And so here's what I'll explain. I started entering competitions in 2005. And between then and 2015, we had won 120 medals, beer, wine, cider, mead, all kinds of competitions. But about 2012 or so, what I realized was I wasn't learning as much from the competition feedback I was getting as I thought I would anymore, because it wasn't really any more detailed about my meads than what I had been able to figure out myself. Now, that doesn't mean there wasn't anything wrong with them, because there's some that did have flaws, but I also knew that too. But it was also one of those things too, okay, you know what I mean? I'm still going to put this in here because I think the flaw is minor enough, let's see. And of course, it got picked up by a competent judge. So I said, I wonder if I'm going to get exposed to more issues to learn by judging that are going to make me go back at my own meads going, wait a minute, that mead has that in it. That's not right. I have more examples of this now. I know what this thing is, and I can pick it up. So I didn't feel compelled to do it to give back, perhaps. I actually was compelled to do it because I felt like I needed to flip the coin and learn something different. And then, of course, I found that it's a great service that you can do for your local homebrew community and the industry at large to be involved in competitions. We just actually helped with the New England Regional that my homebrew club hosts. We ended up being the location where the Meads were actually judged at the tail end of it. Technically, that's illegal for us to do in New Hampshire, but we were closing, and we were not open that day. Our bar was not open, our kitchen was not open, and we went for it because they couldn't find a location otherwise. So, but that's, I think, an area where people need to think about how does this experience change as an entrant versus a judge? So maybe you should enter for a while if you're getting good feedback and you feel like that's helping you. Then consider, well, is that feedback translating to I might actually be a competent judge? So now I'm going to judge for a while, and I'm going to get different feedback, which I'm going to pour back into my own mead making. And now I've got both sides of it that I can understand what am I actually trying to achieve here. And then, as Dan said, you think about, well, what do consumers like? So how do I make a good thing that they like, which is technically sound, but I also know how to make other things that are both technically sound, but also maybe have sort of the stylistic or categorical fitness to be entered into a competition as a good example of this particular type of thing, because technically I know how to make that.
Man, that's an excellent way to look at it. Use it as a way to build and bolster your own skill set to make yourself a better mead maker. That's thinking on another level that I think a lot of cats are even capable of seeing that as an option. You know, a lot of people are very short-sighted. They look at the hardware. That's the end goal. If you got the hardware, that's what matters. Everything else is an aside from that. But I think I'm a big learner. I love to learn. I think my biggest thing in life is being able to expose myself and learn as much as possible, and doing something like that to make it a better product. I tell you, just at this one judging, or 2 or 3 days of judging that I got to do there at Mazer Cup, I was more learning than I've done in, I feel like, a long time, exposed to so many different things. And I think one thing that a lot of people need to do is also get out of their comfort zone as far as that goes, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Also, don't be afraid to trust yourself, trust your palate, trust your judgments, and just like you said, enter the competitions, let it be what it is. Take the criticism when it comes to you, and don't focus so much on the hardware, and just help. Like you're saying, help bring up the community better along those lines, rather than just arbitrarily entering competitions as judges just to try to fill out score sheets. Because I don't think what anybody needs is somebody who's in just filling out score sheets, these long dissertations of everything, just for the sake of filling in lines on a piece of paper.
I mean, it's fun to try stuff that comes to you on the table at competitions. As a judge, you have a job to do, like fill out the score sheet, give this person good feedback, make sure that they get a fair opportunity. But you also get to drink what they put in your glass.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God, what's in this? Holy cow, this is incredible. That's such a fun thing to do, and it's payback. You're getting paid back for the experience, because generally, unless you get a flight of horrible stuff, which that has happened before, but it's okay, you're usually like, oh my God, this is really fun. Like, check this one and this one. And you're talking with your peer judge going, how lucky are we to be drinking this stuff right now? So definitely a fun opportunity aside from the education as well.
Absolutely. Well, we are running up on the 90-minute mark. I'm going to probably have one or two more questions real quick and let everybody get about their evening. So I did want to come back around to the question of, where do you see the mead industry going in the future? Maybe not 5 to 10 years, but like, where do you see the future of the mead industry? Is it session meads? Is it stills? Is it a combination of everything? Do we get, like we were talking about earlier, do we get the collabs from, places across the country? Is it going to be where craft beer, that's another thing I hear a lot about is, oh, the mead industry is where the craft beer industry was, 10 years ago, 15, 20, 25 years ago. I don't think from the way I see it, it can be even really compared like that because it's a whole different beast and a whole different monster. Given the price of honey is so expensive and it's just not going to be able to be as widely made and stuff. But where do you see the future of mead going, I guess, on a more existential level, I guess?
You might lose me here in a second because my phone is dying faster than I'm charging. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, you can go upside down. Just make sure Dan tried that. I think it worked
that
well.
seemed to fix it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll take a shot at this question. I've thought a lot about this just because people have asked us to think about, well, what would have been different if the pandemic hadn't come along? And then you start looking. We're 2 years into that period of time already, so that's about halfway to 5 years or so. What we've seen, I think, is that there are different types of mead drinkers, and I think that there's still an emergent understanding of who those people are. They're not necessarily defined by historical wine drinking. They're not necessarily defined by historical beer or cider drinking either. Maybe there's a nugget of wisdom somewhere in cocktails or something that might typify, a couple of these different groups of people. So I think, looks like we lost Florida.
Yeah.
So I think unfortunately there's probably a couple of forces that are pulling at the mead industry. I think you have the sort of dessert wine presentation of it as a major category that has a huge amount of industry appeal, fan appeal, black market, secondary market appeal for a lot of this stuff. A lot of these things are made in super small batches because they're ridiculously distinctive ingredients, and some of these are just absolute passion projects trying to bring together the most expensive stuff and barrel aging, and all this. So they're very sought after. And I think on the other end, you've got this lower ABV, sparkling, very light, easy drinking sort of, a very lifestyle pairing. It's a great thing. In Florida, as she was describing, they use flavors that are kind of seasonal for them. They might be seasonal for me, but maybe for 9 weeks out of the year, and less so the rest of the year round. So you've got seasonal variations. But I think, as you said, honey prices are going to make it hard for me to see how the commodity version of it, the lower ABV one, is just going to blow up into this behemoth, only because I think that that's going to end up putting such a huge pinch on the honey supply as it is, that it would be to the detriment of the other side. But I'm not convinced that honey wines, as so many meaderies make them, are going to disappear either, because that's what people recognize for mead. We call that a standard mead to people, because that's the template that most people have for it. So I think there's going to be a constant push and pull there as people figure out who are these mead drinkers, and what's the market adjustment for each. Like, are the honey wine drinkers also beer and cider drinkers, or is it more so just the session mead folks, and the honey wine folks might be traditional wine drinkers? I'm not really sure anybody really has a good feel for that right now, so I think it's hard to say, other than that needs to continue to evolve. So that's what I see happening over the next 5 to 10 years.
The evolution of the process.
Understanding the distinct different types of mead customers, so that different pieces of the industry can pop up to serve those types of mead customers. So the opportunity in mead becomes a little bit clearer, per se. I mean, nobody's starting another Budweiser tomorrow, right?
Right.
Technically, no. But some regional breweries that make lager beer can be really successful. Yeah. So, but they're still potentially appealing to a slice of that market that the rest of craft might not necessarily look at the same way as they do people that are coming in for IPAs.
There we go. Looks like she should be back with us here. Maybe coming in.
Only if she's upside down, though.
Yeah.
we go.
There we go. Hey, welcome back.
Sorry, that last 10% went way faster than I expected.
No worries. I didn't know how long this was going to go, so I just kind of been feeling it out. So I appreciate you all giving me your time and everything and your battery life. So Dan, where do you, the future of the meat industry? You see us incorporating more wine drinkers? Is it going to, a big.
No, I mean, Mead, I think has an opportunity to appeal to both those groups. I mean, I think, and so we're Space Time Mead and Cider work. So the Cider is actually asking the same question: are they going to beyond the? The commercial cideries generally, other than the folk that are up in New England who know what good cider is generally the sweet and fizzy stuff. And so what we're seeing, I mean, look at lifestyle demographics and talking about lower alcohol, lower sugar. But at the same time, if I have to take a look at my customer base, it is the stereotype mead drinker, the historian, the lit major, the Dungeons and Dragons player, the Norse pagan, the Harry Potter, all those things is probably 50% of my customer base, and I love it because that's my clan. Now we're also making some huge inroads with the wine community. The folk that are thinking that mead is always sweet or not complex, and so that's why we don't even talk about really being a honey wine. We just say, what do you like to drink? And we pick something off our shelves that we think they're good, like, oh, it's a dry mead. Wow, there's some oaking in this. It reminds me of my Chardonnay. So I can't see the future to see where does the mead industry go. I know if we chase trends, we're probably going to do ourselves more harm than good. If we're going to chase after seltzer, we're going to do hop meads only. If we have a variety or be true to ourselves, because again, we're so small. There's not a lot of us. So maybe together we will try to figure out what it is going to be, as opposed to ultimately, trying to chase something, I guess. We're being open only for 3 years. I've been making mead since 2008 or something. And, it's at the end of the day, traditional meads has always been an interest. Low alcohol meads is something that's really interesting because, at the end of the day, I want more than a couple glasses of a mead or something too. So I think it's going to be a pretty complex palette that we're going to be offering. I hope. I don't know. Tomorrow's lottery number is going to be 472, by the way. I'm not good at predicting the future.
Oh, I love that, brother. That's hilarious. All right, and we'll finish off one last question. Anne-Marie, do you feel a lot of animosity down there in Florida between breweries and wineries and meaderies? Do you feel like it's everybody's kind of accepting, or is it one of those kind of like projected animosities where nobody really hates each other? It's all just one of those media hype things.
Yeah, we have some great relationships. I think the whole craft beverage industry, not just alcohol, when you get into some of the, the kombuchas and the craft teas and craft coffees, I think the whole craft beverage industry is really accepting of one another. Some of our biggest accounts are breweries. That they carry our product on draft because they can't make it. They can't make a cider. We're the answer to the people that come in and want a white wine or a cider. We're the answer for them, and they can support local at the same time. I don't think there's a lot of animosity between any of the industries here. I think we all recognize that if it's the high tide raises all ships. If we all, we're all going to benefit from doing better.
Definitely, 100%. Well, thank you guys all for being here for me today. This is kind of a rough run and seeing, what we can do with this multi-person platform. I love it. Anybody have any opinions on how we could do it better next time?
Everyone should charge their phone fully and completely before.
Yeah, mine's actually plugged in. So
yeah, and maybe that's what everyone should do.
There we go. Make sure everybody's phones are plugged in and everything. Right on. Well, thank you everybody who watched and who's watching live right now. Thank you, Dan, Jason, and Marie for your guys' time. And I'm we got one last here. What do we got here? It says, Three Hands Mead. Thanks so much for dedicating the time to share your outlooks, knowledge tonight. As a very new meadery, these are all great perspectives to hear. And there's, a couple other comments like that as well. So yes, thank you guys so much for your input and helping, bolster the ranks of the mead community and really just appeasing me and my own narcissistic desire to talk to people who I admire. So
I'm proud to be among the other. I mean, I've been in Elixir and I've had Jason's stuff, and so I'm just happy to be among the crowd here. Panel number 3 here.
Yes, thank you for having me on. Absolutely, I do enjoy sharing our experience. I hope it's useful to anyone who is paying attention.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yeah, same. Yeah, thanks for including us as well. Can't wait to see all the new and upcoming meaderies that are out there.
Yes. So I'll bid you guys all a good evening. Look for this video on YouTube coming out. Anybody who's out there watching, I'll have it uploaded there as well. So farewell from TK and Drinks and everybody else here tonight. Everybody else have a good night and good evening.
Bye.
Let's go.
Thank you.